Here we go. This week in Should I Quit My Job? Question asker says, this is on our Ask Engineers, new hire is making $10,000 more than most engineers in same position. I just found out that a new hire with no experience makes $10,000 more than engineers with the same title and 2 to 3 years experience, and slightly less than others that have 5+ years of experience and additional responsibilities. There are 8 engineers in our department that is understaffed, and 2 of them put in their 2 weeks notice last week. Does anyone have any advice on how to approach management about this pay discrepancy? We don't want to throw the new guy under the bus since this is not his fault, and he seems like a pretty nice guy. I'm waiting on my PE results to find a new job, but I feel like I may have to retake it next year, so I might be in this position for a while longer. 3 to 4 of us are going to meet up to discuss what our next steps should be, but if anyone has similar experience, I would love to hear how you handled it and how it played out. So I don't have any similar experience, and I haven't handled it, but I do have a podcast where I can provide unsolicited advice. So here I go. So first of all, shout out to you for not wanting to throw the new guy under the bus. It is definitely not their fault. And I'd say that we're definitely in a pretty competitive labor market right now for employers looking for hires. So their higher salary is probably a reflection of how competitive the market is for hiring people. And it's also maybe even related to inflation. I have a economics minor, but I'll be honest, I haven't been keeping up too closely with inflation, but you know what? I have Google. How much inflation in 2021? Wow, 6.2%, where 2020 had 1.4% and 2019 had 2.3%. Yeah, year to date, 6.2% inflation. That's according to usinflationcalculator.com, and I don't know what kind of bias usinflationcalculator.com might have. If somebody wants to back check that for me, I'd appreciate it. But just for a swag here, yeah, there's a lot of inflation. So that might that's maybe not $10,000 worth, but the fact that they're making more than other engineers in the same position is definitely a big deal. And this is why a lot of employers don't want their employees to talk about their salaries, but this is even more the reason to have respectful conversations with your coworkers about your salaries. I mean, the reality is that there's, on the business side, there's different reasons why different people make more, and it might be a degree that they have, or a program, or hiring at the time. But it sounds like the fact that they're making more means that the other people have been on a hiring on a raise freeze, or they haven't been getting additional compensation that keeps them in line with what market is. And I think that it's really cool that the 3 or 4 of you are meeting up to discuss what your next steps would be. So I think the reality is that your current employer needs to compensate you more. And the reality is it might be very difficult for them to do that, but it's probably also going to be even more difficult for them to replace all that experience, considering the fact that they paid a new hire $10,000 more. So it sounds like your employer has gotten themselves into a little bit of a pickle, and your department's understaffed. And I don't know what the situation is for your company budget wise, but yeah, those guys with more experience should be getting raises. The only issue is I don't know how big of a company this is. And if it's a really big company, then it, again, hiring could have been done out of a different budget into your department, and they're pulling from a different budget to fill it. So maybe it might not even be your manager's fault, or the director, whoever set your salary's fault. The budget might have come from elsewhere. So think about that. Somebody else might have set that new hire's pay. But the reality is yeah, y'all are definitely underpaid. So, and you had people put in their 2 weeks notice. So I think, having just a candid conversation with management and saying, hey, regardless of what the policy is, I don't think there's a policy against talking about wages, but just be like, hey, so we know what new guy's making. We got guys here that are contributing, and hey, shout out. I mean, great for new guy. That's definitely obviously market. And we also believe we should be compensated the market rate for our experience. So we expect, what's the timeline on us getting promotions, and how far in the past was it? It needs to happen fast. And that's the unfortunate thing. If it's a really big company and they don't have much flex, it might take them a while. It might take a little bit longer to make it happen. There might be approvals, but if you emphasize it with enough, there's always exceptions to the rules. So, but yeah, I think that definitely talking about it with your manager, and not coming at it from a perspective of not liking them, because you don't know the context. You really do not know the context on how that person got that salary. But just saying, hey, that seems like it's market now, so we need to be at least compensated that, and probably more because we have more experience. As for how it'll go, here's the deal, man. The other thing is if you want market, then you might have to consider jumping ship and going somewhere else. I don't usually advocate that kind of thing, but there is some truth to what a lot of people get, especially in the software industry. People say that the best way to get pay advances is to bounce around from place to place, and it really, it depends on what kind of angle you're playing, and what kind of changes you're willing to make, and what kind of things that you're willing to, what your priorities are. But you might also start looking for other jobs as well. This is not gonna be a full-on quit. On a scale of 1 to 5, with 5 being definitely quit your job and 1 being don't quit your job at all, I put this at like a 2 to 4. 2 if you just want 2 because you're gonna go and ask the question first, and then we're approaching that crazy 4 territory. If your manager just completely ignores you and treats you worse because you had this ask, and gets mad at you for having the conversation, because they shouldn't. I mean, that's the risk that's their risk, and if they're getting upset because they got found out for this discrepancy. So that's 7 minutes of me rambling to say, just have the conversation with your teammates, and come in with a positive mentality. Don't come in completely indignant. Just come in just wanting to learn, and just recognizing that your manager is put in the position that they're in, and there might be things that you don't know. They might be limited to a certain budget, and they had to negotiate with this person to get them in, but also be ready to negotiate with them, and if it really is going to hurt you, that if they can't do it, then they can't give you a raise, then be prepared to start looking elsewhere. And then maybe you'll have a little more leverage. But yeah, I wish you the best of luck. It doesn't sound like you were upset with your pay beforehand, but now you know. So you have every reason to want more. So best of luck. I'm not complaining. My thoughts get complicated. I cannot explain in lameness. Never losing focus because I ain't chasing payments. Still playing in the basement while I'm working on arrangements. They heard the kid in 50 countries. Thank God that's amazing. But I'd rather thank Spotify. They put me on the station.